Folks, big happenings on Capitol Hill today. Democrats forced a vote on restoring the Affordable Care Act subsidies. This was the tally right here. It was 230 to 196. 17 Republicans voted for the bill. It was the bill by Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. I made a mistake yesterday. I said her bill had 1 year of subsidy. It was actually 3 years worth of subsidies. Now it goes over to the United States Senate. There's no word of whether or not it's going to actually pass over there, but it does put pressure on Republicans, especially those senators who are running for re-election, because they're going to have to vote on this issue of restoring health care to their constituents. And you know what? You got folks in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Iowa, in Texas, who are all impacted all around the country by this. And so guess what? They now are going to have to deal with this. And so that was a huge, huge action taken today. Virginia Congressman James Walkinshaw joins us right now. Congressman, glad to have you on the show. This was an effort, this was first of all, a great move by Democrats. And I kept saying in 2025, the Democrats are out of sort trying to figure out how to respond to what's going on. And we saw it with the Epstein files, that discharge petition. Now, here you had an issue, and Republicans were vulnerable by Democrats using the discharge petition. You go bypass the committees, you bypass Speaker Johnson, and you force them to actually vote on this. To me, there should be other affordability issues that Democrats should be eyeing in 2026 to force the same vote on other issues.
You're absolutely right, Roland. I mean, this was a big victory today. Credit to Congresswoman Underwood, leader Hakeem Jeffries, who really united Democrats around this fight for healthcare affordability. You know, we went through a shutdown where we kept the pressure on the Republicans to cancel their healthcare cuts. We took the argument to the American people across the country and highlighted the impact of allowing these tax credits to expire. And we got a big victory today. And you're right, the Senate should be feeling some pressure right now. What they should do is take up the bill, the 3-year clean extension, pass it, and send it to President Trump's desk. It sounds like Republican leadership over there aren't going to do that, but that would be the smart thing for them to do. But you're absolutely right. We have to find other avenues over the course of this year to force Republicans to come to the table and join us in trying to make life more affordable for the American people. I think one way we'll be able to do that is with these tariffs. We know that Trump's tariffs are driving up costs for hardworking families, especially low or moderate income families who spend more of their income on, everyday goods and durable goods, and the tariffs are driving up those costs. We have discharge petitions on a bunch of those tariffs, and we're going to be pressuring Republicans to join us on those as well.
Well, another issue that we saw take place, there were a couple of bills that Trump vetoed, and it was crazy. They were passed unanimously by the House. He vetoes them. It was really about a personal thing, trying to get back at Republicans in this case. And then what happened? It needed 2/3 vote. Well, 35 Republicans crossed, 213 Democrats voted for it, but it didn't get the 2/3 vote. I mean, I keep saying it. The Republicans in the House are cowards. It passes unanimously, but you don't want to embarrass your king, and so you don't pass these bills. So screw the people in Colorado in the Beaufort district when it comes to water issue, and screw other Americans because you got a petty tyrant who's sitting in the Oval Office.
Yeah, I was on the floor for those votes and proudly voted twice to override the vetoes, and I was watching the Republican side, and sometimes it's just embarrassing to watch them. You can see the fear in their eyes, the fear of Donald Trump, and what they need to realize, and a handful of them are starting to realize, Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about them. He doesn't care about their policy priorities. He doesn't care about their political futures. Donald Trump only cares about Donald Trump, but a lot of them seemingly are going to go to their political graves with their arms wrapped around Donald Trump, hoping that he'll love them back someday, and he just ain't going to do it.
So another action took place today. Now, again, we'll see what happens in the House, but on the Senate side, they actually voted, and several Republicans crossed the aisle and voted with the Democrats, limiting what Trump can do militarily in Venezuela. It passed 52 to 47. Now, granted, we know doggone well, he'll veto that, but that's a perfect example of, I mean, thank goodness you have 4 or 5 Republicans who are understanding that Congress has authority. There are 3 branches of government. There's executive, legislative, and judicial. These folks are now realizing, guess what? You're supposed to use your power, not let him do whatever he wants to do.
That's right. Look, the action in Venezuela was flat out illegal, violation of the Constitution. Huge credit to Senator Kane from Virginia for getting that war powers resolution moving in the Senate. We have a similar resolution that was introduced in the House today. It's a privileged resolution, so there will be a vote potentially next week on that in the House. And I'm hopeful, just like they had some Republicans in the Senate willing to break with Trump on this, that we'll have enough in the House. We only need a couple. And you're right, Trump will veto it, but that's still a major development for Congress to send a war powers resolution restricting his authority to engage militarily with respect to Venezuela. Put that on his desk and force him to veto it. Very significant.
I've got panelists here. Want them to have opportunity to ask a question of you. Nola Haynes, you first. What's your question for Congressman Walkinshaw?
Thank you so much for doing the work that you all are tirelessly doing. So, on the messaging side of things, there's always this kind of group of folks who feel like Dems aren't doing enough. And then I am one of those folks who understand how legislation works. So I'm very curious, besides healthcare, which I know is a very popular policy for Dems, what else can folks like us be out there messaging to Americans who are looking for policies, not necessarily just anti-Trump everything, but that are looking for something forward, something else? So what else, in addition to healthcare, should we be out there talking about?
Yeah, I really appreciate the way you framed that. And, I think as you described, there's a lot of folks out there that want to see Democrats in Congress fighting, have wanted to see more of that. I think we've been delivering that over the last couple of months. But, my dad was a boxer, and he used to tell me, the purpose of a fight is to win. Sounds like a simple thing, but some people don't seem to get that. So we also have to find some fights like this healthcare fight that we can fight and win and deliver for the American people. I mentioned rolling back the tariffs. I think that's an important fight. You're right. That's an anti-Trump policy. But I think this year, as we look to go to the voters in November in the midterm elections, you will see congressional Democrats coalesce around a coherent, consistent agenda around affordability. Yes, healthcare, extending the tax credits, but also things that we as Democrats want to do, which is, bring down prescription drug prices, get us closer to universal affordable healthcare for every single American, a minimum wage, a real living wage for every single American, more rights for working people so they can organize, come together in the workplace and get the pay and benefits and conditions that they need and deserve. I think we just need to do the things that Donald Trump said he was going to do when he campaigned, when he said he was going to bring down costs for everyday Americans. When he said he was going to deliver a better economy for working Americans. You and I know that was a lie when he said it, but a lot of Americans bought into it, and we got to actually take that out and deliver it in real ways.
Reese.
Thank you, Congressman, for being here. What I'm seeing is a lack of information like dashboards or something that's easy to kind of get your hands on to really explain the severity and the vastness of the situation. I think the Democrats did a really good job around the big beautiful bill and kind of messaging, and even around the shutdown before, messaging how these subsidies are going to impact everybody's prices. Is there anything in the works that you can think of that will help really bring this closer to home for people who maybe are not on Obamacare, who are not on the exchanges, and who maybe feel like this is an issue that other people have to deal with that doesn't really impact them?
Yeah, look, it's a huge challenge with healthcare because our healthcare system is so complex, and describing what different changes mean to different folks. I usually try to do it in the terms of, by sharing stories less than statistics and numbers. I talk about a constituent of mine who's here in Fairfax County, Virginia, 28 years old. He and his wife just welcomed their first child a couple months ago, so they're really excited for that. They get their health care from the Affordable Care Act exchange. And last year, their premiums for the three of them, mom, dad, baby, was $800 a month, which is a lot of money, but they could afford it with some scrimping. This year, because of the expiration of the tax credits and other things Republicans have done to drive up healthcare costs, their premiums are $1,600 a month, and they can't afford that. So dad doesn't have health insurance as of today, so that they can pay for it for mom and their new baby. And those are the choices that Americans are making. So I think those stories that folks can relate to are probably the most effective way for us to drive the importance of this issue home.
Brett.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Congressman Walkinshaw. We saw, of course, that you and your colleagues moved some legislation, some of the appropriation legislation today, kind of, trying to forestall or prevent some of the stuff that might hit at the end of the month and perhaps another government shutdown. My question is pretty basic. How much do you think that Mike Johnson's very tenuous grip, we saw him scurrying out of the chamber after another vote that he couldn't prevent today, how much do you think his very tenuous grip on the speaker's gavel might be used as an asset by you and your colleagues to try to break up this Republican solidarity? I'm saying that because we know that there are the open seats in Texas and California, the death of your colleague, of course, LaMalfa. Taylor Greene's seat has up for, of course, election. And of course, there's Mickey Sherrill's seat in New Jersey. Are some of your folks on the other side of the aisle, perhaps, are they more vulnerable for you all to basically push and push and push at them to perhaps get some of them to chip away? And perhaps maybe might we be looking at a Speaker Jeffries long before November if this continuing fracture keeps up and some of these people step out of Congress sooner rather than later?
Yeah, you really honed in on a critical dynamic here. And, before I get into the possibility of a change in power before the elections, as you, I think, hinted at, Speaker's tenuous control, not just his very narrow majority, but the fact that, look, generally, even at the White House, where it's been reported Trump laughs at Speaker Johnson, he's viewed as a very weak leader. That gives Democrats a lot of leverage. And I think you see that in the appropriations bills, 3 that were passed today, that rejected a lot of what was in Donald Trump's budget that he sent, that added protections for federal agencies and federal workers, a lot of whom that I represent, because Republicans are afraid of another shutdown because they know what it did to Donald Trump's polling numbers. We have a lot more leverage in those conversations and those debates and negotiations than we did last year. And you're absolutely right. I mean, given the narrowness of his majority, if you had more resignations, a couple more resignations, or anyone switching parties, or God forbid, any other significant life event on the Republican side, you could have an evenly divided House or even a narrow Democratic majority. We will have another special election in Texas that's likely a Democratic seat later this month. So we'll be adding a Democratic seat. You mentioned former Congresswoman, now Governor Sherrill as well. So a lot of moving pieces, and it could be a very unpredictable year in the House of Representatives.
Congressman Walkinshaw, last point I want to make here, and just tell me if you agree with this or not, and that is this. There were a lot of people who disagreed with me and others, and they said, that I was wrong to support the Democrats' action when it came to the federal government shutdown. And I said then, Democrats should not lift a finger. They should force Republicans to do their job. And I fundamentally believed that what the shutdown did was, I think what it did, it woke Democrats up. It finally caused Democrats to find a singular issue. And also, I think probably right before that, what was happening with the Epstein files. Those two things, the Epstein files and that discharge petition and the shutdown, forced Democrats to look at what people were talking about and the issues. And what it did was it gave Democrats time to refine a healthcare message, tap into it, build resonance, where Republicans, independents were like, yo, what the hell is going on? And so while that was happening, you take the tariffs as well, how it's impacting all of these white conservative farmers in areas where they voted 65, 70, 75% for Trump. And so the shutdown in many ways gave House Democrats in the Senate your sea legs. And so now I think the thing is, how do you build upon that? Do you sort of you agree with that?
I think you're absolutely right. And I was in a similar place debating with people before the shutdown, and I told people, look, the American people, if there's a shutdown, as ultimately there was, the idea that the American people won't blame Donald Trump for that shutdown was absurd. Donald Trump spent most of the year 2025 shutting down the federal government. I mentioned I represent 60,000 federal employees. Every neighborhood I represent, you have folks who have been fired by Donald Trump, who worked in federal agencies, entire agencies that were shut down by Trump before the technical shutdown that we had. So I knew that voters would blame Donald Trump, right? He's the guy that hates the federal government. Of course, he'd be very willing to shut it down if he doesn't get what he wants in terms of his cuts to the healthcare system. And I felt like, look, I didn't want to see a shutdown. My constituents, some of them went without paychecks through the shutdown, but Republicans made no effort to reach out to Democrats like me in those negotiations or conversations to say, hey, we don't have the votes on the Republican side, so we're going to need your vote. What's important to your constituents that we can consider here in this process? They just made no effort to do that. So I think you're absolutely right. It allowed Democrats to highlight the healthcare issue. It helped to unify us, and the country correctly blamed Donald Trump and Republicans for it.
All right, then, Congressman Walkinshaw, we appreciate you joining us on the show. Look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Roland. Have a great night.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase, and I'm here with a very important message. We are at a turning point in the Black community where we must have equity in the apps we use that scale to billions of dollars. But this time, we own the infrastructure, we own the culture, and we shape the future. And Fanbase is the future. Fanbase combines the free functionality of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube into an all-in-one platform built for the evolution of social media and monetization. With over 1.4 million users, that's real proof that we are shifting the conversation of tech ownership and equity for creators. So right now, I want you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. This marks a turning point in Black ownership of social media. If we don't take this opportunity to own social media right now, we will always be customers to our own creations. And that can't go on. So once again, go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. We must own the platforms where our voices live, our stories matter, and where our culture drives the world. Thank you.